Tonight I want to talk with you about two miracles. One of the popular Christmas movies that comes out every Christmas season is Miracle on 34th Street. So when I use the word miracle in association with Christmas, I'm sure many of you are going to think about that movie. But the miracles that I'm going to talk about tonight have nothing to do with Santa Claus, but instead have to do with really what Christmas is all about. And the first miracle is the miracle of creation. And the second miracle is the miracle of the incarnation. But first, when we talk about the miracle of creation, I want to take you back in time. I'm actually going to take you back in time, not to the beginning of time yet, but I want to take you back in time 48 years ago on this very night. 48 years ago on this very night, 1 billion, that's with a B, 1 billion people around the world tuned in to a broadcast that was carried live on TV. That broadcast was from the Apollo 8 rocket as it was going around the moon. How many of you remember that broadcast by chance? If you were alive and listening, the people raising their hands are old. I only know about it historically, So anyway, just kidding. Love you all. I'm holding on to a little bit of my youth as much as I can, but that broadcast was carried live around the world. It was a very popular broadcast, and NASA had instructed the astronauts on the Apollo 8 mission to conclude their broadcast with something, and their words were something appropriate. And they left much discretion to the astronauts on what that would be. So the astronauts, I believe it's Bill Anders, Frank Borman, and Jim Lovell, talked amongst themselves, and they decided on what that appropriate broadcast would be. Most of the 30-minute broadcast was simply telling the people of Earth what it was like to be up there and kind of describing the moon and talking about as they were going around the moon and seeing the Earth rise from their perspective. But at the end of the broadcast, they had something very special for the people of the world. And I'm going to take you back in time and actually let you listen to that broadcast right now. Now, this broadcast is from a video that's been slightly enhanced. The images have been enhanced for you, and there's a little bit of music in the background, but the voices are actually the voices of the astronauts from that night. So let's listen together.
Now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament, the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
That episode is considered to be one of the most moving episodes in NASA's history. And the astronauts, as they were up there, and just picture it from their perspective, as they're up there and they're seeing the moon close up and they're in the vacuum of space and seeing the stars. And as they come around and they see the earth rising, and we normally see the sun rise, but they're seeing the earth rise and seeing all the people back then, the first thing they could think of was Genesis chapter 1. And there is something about common sense. And common sense says that when you look at something and you see something that should be very obvious to people, then that truly is the conclusion that you should take. And there's no way that you can look at this vast universe. There's no way that with an intelligent brain you can look at this vast universe and conclude naturally that it just poofed into existence. I realize that there are some people out there with lots of degrees who say that that is what happened, but you and I all know smart people that believe dumb things. And the truth is, the first chapter of the book of Romans tells us why. The first chapter of the book of Romans says that people suppress the truth in unrighteousness. People don't want to believe in God, and so they will try to find all kinds of other excuses to describe why we're here. But when you consider the complexity of the universe, all the laws of science, all the laws of nature, all the planets, the earth, everything, when you consider how the atmosphere works and how we're protected and how the sun, we're just the right distance from the sun, so we're not too cold and not too hot, and all of that. And when you consider the complexity of the human body and everything, you cannot help but see a creator at work. So we have been created, ladies and gentlemen. The greatest miracle ever was the miracle that started it all, and that is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And yet, the human race, despite being given life by God, the human race chose to rebel against God. Some people say, well, I'm not a sinner. Well, your parents didn't have to teach you how to sin, just as you haven't had to teach your child how to sin. Sin comes naturally to all of us. And you can look at the news, and you can see in the newspapers and on the internet, you can see sin all around you. It would be, frankly, the height of stupidity to deny that there is sin in the world. And it would also be the height of arrogance to deny that you and I aren't a part of that sinful world. We are all sinners. The reason why marriages have problems is because you've got two sinners married to one another. The reason why kids have problems with their parents is because you've got sinners raising other sinners, into this world. The reason why nations can't get along is because all the nations of the world are made up of sinners, and they have to interact with other nations also made up of sinners. The fact is, we are all sinners, and we live in a sinful world. But God didn't stop it there. God's love was for us even while we were yet sinners. God loved us, and he loves us with his entire heart and his entire being, because God is love. And because of God's love, we get to the second miracle that I want to talk about tonight, and that is the miracle of the incarnation. In the miracle of the incarnation, God himself came into the world as a human being. And that is a profound miracle. And we find the writer John, the Apostle John, talking about that miracle in John chapter 1. In John chapter 1. And I think I told Jim that I was only going to read a couple of verses, but I changed my mind. I'm going to read the first 5 here, and so he's already on top of the ball. So on that. But John chapter 1 in verse number 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Some translations say the darkness did not overcome it. In the beginning was the Word. John uses that term very intentionally here. It has a double meaning to it. On the one hand, John, in this Hellenistic Jewish culture in which he's writing, is very much influenced by Greek culture. In Greek culture, he uses the term logos, and that term logos means word. And so the word normally meant logic, reason, truth. So when you would express principles, you would express concepts, that meant that you were engaging in word. And your word, if you would, was your attempt to explain reality, your attempt to explain reason. And so John is saying that Jesus, not only does Jesus, give words, Jesus is the Word. He is the truth. He is reason. He is logic. He is the final authority. And that's what John is saying by using that word. but it also has another meaning. It's got some serious biblical meaning coming from the Old Testament, and that is that again, he calls back in the beginning. He brings us back to Genesis chapter 1, and God spoke this world into existence. God spoke us into existence, and God spoke light itself into existence. Let there be light, and there was light. God's power over all of us is he can just speak us into existence, and he can speak us out of existence. All of reality is subject to the word of God. And so John here is referring to God's awesome creative power when he talks about the word here. And so he's making it clear that in the beginning was the Word. And he goes on and says, and guess what? The Word was with God, and the Word was God. In other words, Jesus is God. John makes it very clear. There are some denominations, one in particular, actually it's more of kind of a cult than a denomination, but that says that no, Jesus is not God. And in fact, this translation that they will argue doesn't say it was God, it says it was a God. That's not true. The original Greek, you go back to it, there is no article A in there. It is Jesus is the Word. He is God. And there are no other gods other than Jesus Christ. And so as a result of that, we are here because of the power of God, and we're here because of the love of God. And God came in the flesh in the form of Jesus because of his love for you and for me. It was a love that you and I did not deserve, and we do not deserve. This world is full of darkness. And I know right now many of you have darkness on your minds because we're all influenced by it. We live in a world full of darkness. Yes, we live in a world that's beautiful with God's creation, but we also live in a world that's marred by sin. And so we have corrupted beauty. And you can see evidence not only of God's awesomeness and God's power, but we can also see evidence of the devil's work. We can see evidence of sin all around us. Marred beauty. And that's the darkness. The darkness represents fear. Darkness represents depression. Darkness represents hopelessness. Darkness represents greed and lust and temptation and all the sins that we have to, deal with, not only in our own spirit, but deal with from others as well. We often are the victims of our own sin. We are often the victims of other people's sin. Sin affects all of us, and it's all around us, and it's in us, that darkness. And that darkness can cause us to lose hope and to lose sight. And in fact, when we take our eyes off of the light and focus on the darkness, we can become very despairing. Those of you who have been lost in the dark before know what I'm talking about. I've been lost in the dark before. It's not fun. One time, I was in a dark church. Churches can be scary at nighttime. I'm just telling you right now, all right? And now, this is back when I worked in Ohio, and my first pastorate there. And one of the first nights I was there, I would hear noises. I'd be alone at night. My office was at the church, and I had to walk up a hill and down a hill and stuff to get to the house that we lived in. That's a true story, but the house was actually on the property, so it was only like 300 feet. But anyway, it's something good to tell my grandkids. I had to walk, to work and stuff. But I would just do some work at the office late at night, and then I would walk home, and it would get pretty dark in that church, and I'd start hearing noises in that church. I'll tell you, here's a tangent off a tangent. We'll get really creepy, and this was in rural Ohio, so a lot of stuff happens in rural Ohio that doesn't happen in Montgomery County, Maryland, okay? And one of those things is we did a lot of funerals there. They actually left a dead body in the church one night, and so I'm there at the office working, and there's a coffin with the body in it, and that's just this just kind of gets to you a little bit in your mind and stuff. And so anyway, as I would kind of walk past to go to the restroom, I'd say, "Hi Frank, how you doing?" Just keep on going. But the bottom line is these churches get kind of creepy. But this one night there was no body there, and there's one night, but I was hearing noises, distinct noises from the dark. And so, I'm a Christian, and I'm sure you're glad to hear that, but I am. And I do believe in God, and I have faith and all that, but when you hear noises and you don't know what those noises are, and you're alone, it's kind of, when you're alone in the dark, it's kind of creepy. So I've got a little flashlight. This is before I had the fancy cell phone with the flashlight on it. So I've got my little flashlight, and it didn't have batteries in it. And so I had to literally walk my way out, and stubbing my toe and stuff, and trying to figure out what these. It turns out there was a baby monitor in the nursery that had been left on, and it was picking up noises from another house, And so I'm hearing this in the middle of the night, And so I had to actually get to the source to figure it out, but I'm telling you, that was kind of creepy. And the point is that when you're in the dark, your imagination can run wild. And that's true emotionally and spiritually too. When you're in the dark and there's uncertainty and you don't know what's around the corner, your imagination can run wild. And your mind can start to fill in the gaps and fill in the blanks. And your sense of hopelessness can get even worse. The enemy thrives in the dark. Jesus tells us that sin loves darkness rather than light. And the more we walk, frankly, away from the Lord, the more we walk in sin, the more we are in the dark, and the more we are right where the enemy wants us to be. And the further away we get from God, the harder it is. The harder it is to maintain our faith and our focus on God. And the dark then plays with our minds. And I don't know what darkness you're dealing with right now. It may be pain in your life, a pain of loss, a pain of loneliness. It could be temptations you're dealing with. It could be sin. It could be the sin of someone else that's affecting you, estrangement in your family. I don't know what the darkness may be in your particular life, in your particular heart, but I'm telling you this, God knows what it is. And God is offering you light. And that light is in the form of his Son, Jesus Christ. And just as Jesus came into the world 2,000 years ago to bring light, a light that the darkness cannot overcome, a light that the darkness cannot resist. What is true for our entire universe, what is true for all of us, is true for you and for me on an individual level. And so this Christmas, it may be that your Christmas plans haven't quite worked out. It may be that you're kind of stressed right now. It may be that things aren't going right for you or whatever. All of that really can be a distraction. The real purpose of Christmas is for us to focus on the light of Jesus Christ. The real purpose of Christmas is for us to remember, frankly, what Christmas is all about. And so if you will allow the light of Christ to light up your heart and your life this Christmas season, this can be one of the best Christmases you've ever had, regardless of the circumstances. Regardless of the circumstances. There was a family, I heard their testimony several years ago. I was about Jonathan's age at the time when I heard this testimony. But they had planned big Christmas and had gotten all kinds of presents and all kinds of things. And then they had a fire, and the fire burned down their house, and they lost everything. And their entire Christmas was turned upside down as a result of that. But they resolved that they weren't going to let the enemy win. So what they did is they actually got involved with the local prison ministry. Our brother Charles Bailey up here has done a lot of prison ministry himself. Then they went and they celebrated Christmas with some prison inmates that year. And they sang songs, and they sang the Christmas carols, and they shared the gospel of Jesus Christ. The kids would later grow up and say that was the best Christmas they ever had. Remember the real meaning of Christmas. Jesus Christ is who will light up your life and your heart. In a moment, we are going to sing Silent Night. And as we sing Silent Night, we're going to have these lights turned out. And then I'm going to take a candle, because they're trusting me with fire tonight, and so I'm going to take a candle. And then several of you are going to come and light your candle off of my candle. And then you're going to light one another's candles. And within a matter of a few moments, even though the artificial lights will be turned off, in a matter of a few moments, the candles will burn bright and we will have light once again. I want you to understand that what we're doing with this fire here is a metaphor for what Jesus can do in our lives. The more we allow the candle of Christ's love and the candle of Christ's grace to burn in our hearts, and the more we touch other people, the more we can spread the light of Christ around. And that is what Christmas is all about. That must start in our own homes, and then it must extend to our churches, and then it can extend to our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, 2,000 years ago when Jesus came, he only had 12 committed disciples that followed him around everywhere. But today, there are about 2 billion people on the planet Earth who associate themselves with Christianity. You know, it was only shortly after Christianity was born, the Roman Empire persecuted it. But within a matter of just a couple hundred years, Christianity took over the Roman Empire. Fact of the matter is, the darkness cannot resist the light. And so please make sure, don't let the enemy extinguish your light this Christmas. Make sure your light burns bright. I want to close by reading from John chapter 8 and verse number 12, the words of Jesus, and then we will enter our time of candlelight and our time of singing. And I'd like to invite the praise band forward to help us with that. As the praise band comes forward, here are the words of Jesus, John chapter 8 and verse number 12. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Do you have the light of life this Christmas? Father, I ask tonight that you move in our hearts, Lord. If anyone here isn't sure of their relationship with you, I pray that they will seek out one of our elders or one of our deacons tonight to pray with them. Lord, may this Christmas season not pass without us knowing what our relationship is with you. There is no more important relationship than that. Father, for those here who have a relationship with you, I pray that they will recognize that that relationship, their relationship with you, is the most important relationship that they can ever have. That relationship that they have with you can get them through any problem they have in their life with any other relationship they have. That relationship that we have with you, Father, can get us through tough circumstances, can get us through all kinds of ordeals and challenges and temptations. Our most important relationship is the one with you, and I pray that we will focus on that relationship this Christmas season so that we will all have the light that your Son offers us. It's in Jesus' name we pray this prayer.